Hey guys, what's up? This is LJS here, and I am back with another deck profile. Today, my deck profile is not gonna be Abyss. Ha ha ha, I tricked you guys. The profile is going to be on the Witches of the Shadow Paladin. So yeah, which is this witch and another witch legion. So, if you guys have watched the anime, and when you guys saw the little cute Indian girl, I forgot her name. Basically, she was using the Shadow Paladin Witch, and when her skill was first revealed, everyone's like, whoa, that is pretty cool. So, Shadow Paladin Witch brings a really new, interesting mechanic into Vanguard of like cursing your opponent's rear guards, which I find really interesting. That's why I'm very interested in making a Shadow Paladin Witch deck. So this is the deck profile of that Witch deck, and the specialty is, as I mentioned, cursing your opponent and making your opponent's rear guards into great zeros. Amazing magic. So the starter, the only Shadow Paladin Witch starter, she's not actually that good, but there's a reason why I run her in this deck, because she combos well with another card. So her skill is that when she boosts, if your Vanguard is in Legion and she boosts and something hits a Vanguard, put her in the soul and call two Great Zero units from your deck into rearguard cycle as rest. So she's like a weaker Judge Bar. Basically, boost, hit Vanguard, must have a Vanguard in Legion, put her in the soul, call two Great Zeros at rest. So yeah, so she's used to combo with another card, which I'll explain later. And for grade 3s, I ran 4 Mesmerizing Witch Fianna. So her skill is really good. So her skill essentially allows you to curse 2 of your opponent's rearguard into great zeros. So when she's in Legion, you can counter 2, and yeah, I'll explain the skill in detail later on. So if you wanna know how the skill works and any skill, and if you want to know what the skill does and hear what I have to say or have some discussion about skill, do continue watching. But yeah, I'll just do the deck profile first. So that's 4 Witches of Fianna. So she's your ideal early game ride. And next we run 4 Cultus Witch Rias. So her skill is basically to reduce your opponent's Vanguard power by 5k for every grade 0. So she is your late game ride, and she is your finisher. So late game, ride her, use her skill, attack your opponent, and your opponent will just die because they can't guard. So next for grade 2, we run 4 of Witch of Reality, Femme. So she is the 12k attacker for Witches for Shadow Paladin, and she is the mate of Fianna. Ta-da! Legion. Mate. So that's 12k, run 4. Pretty self-explanatory because she's the Legion mate of her, so you need to run 4. Next we run 4 of the Inspection Witch Deirdre. So her skill is when you call her, you can then curse your opponent's rearguard into a great 0 from the drop zone. You run 4 because her skill is good, and number 2, she's the mate for Rias. So run 4 because you want to increase chances of being able to Legion. Next, I run 2 of this Skull Witch, Nemain. So she's a witch for Shadow Paladin, and some of you may be wondering, why do you run her? She's only a 3k base. But I would say she's useful because I've tried testing out this deck with her, and she's quite good. She's quite useful in number 1, early game draws, as well as early game setting your drop zone out, because her skill requires you to discard 1 and then draw 2. So you can set up your drop zone early for Legion. So I run 2. You can actually run 3 if you want, but I run 2 because I don't want to risk riding into her, because she's 3k and is so abusable. Next, I run 1 of these 10k vanilla Comet Witch Serva. She's upside down, yeah, flying in the air. But yeah, so I run her because she's vanilla, and she's a really good turn 2 ride, because when you ride her, if you somehow manage to get her at turn 2, ride her, she's a good 10k defense, 10k guard, no pass. Pretty good. So for grade 1, I run 2 Witch Perfect Guards. I know this is a Genesis Perfect Guard, but for those of you who don't know, the newer from the Legion era onwards, Perfect Guards no longer have the clan restriction written on it. So you can actually splash them in any clan deck if you want. But if you are OCD and you want a pure Shadow Paladin deck, then you can run Markleer or the Revenger Markleer. But I want my decks to be all witches, so I run 2 of the Genesis Quintet Perfect Guard. And I run 2 Quintet Walls. Actually, if you want, you can switch them all to perfect guards, because this deck is quite counterblast heavy. So I might actually leave this out and just run for perfect guard, because perfect guards are still good and viable. But anyways, quintet wall, if you want to run, is good for early game to set up a drop zone for Legion quickly. Next, we run 4 of the Witch of Precious Stones, Dana. So her skill is the same as Deirdre on call. So +1, curse one of your opponent's rear guard to become a grade 0 from the drop zone. So yeah, I'll explain the skills in more detail later on, like the specifics you can do and can't do. Yeah, after this. So next, I run 3 of the 10k attackers for witches. So 10k attacker because you want to rush early game, because this game you want to, for this deck, to use some of the skills, you want your opponent to have grade 0s in their drop zone. So you want to try to pressure them to use grade 0s to guard early on, so that late game you can use all these skills to curse your opponent's rear guards and swap them for a grade 0 from the drop zone. So yeah, next I run 3 of the Witch of Quest, Securna. So she is considered one of the MVP of this deck because her skill is really good. Basically, her skills allows you to minus 5k from your opponent's Vanguard, which essentially is equal to giving 5k to all your rear guards, all your front row rear guards. So very good skill. So next, for triggers, I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 crits. Okay. Then I run 4 of the new Witch stands. So this is a Witch of Goats Med. So I run 4 of this stand trigger because her skill allows you to unflip damage. So as I mentioned, this deck has very counterblast heavy, but she allows you to unflip damage, and she combos well with the starter as mentioned earlier. So her skill, put her in a soul, call 2 of these out, unflip 2 damage. So I run her. And stand triggers are also quite good because more attacks, more pressure. Then run 4 of the heals, okay? So now let's look at the skills in more detail, and I'll explain some of the combos you can do. So let's look at Mesmerizing Witch, Fianna. So her skill is, the first one is a Legion skill. Yeah, I can't focus it. There we go. Anyways, yeah. So her first skill is Legion. So basically, for those of you who don't know, if both of you and your opponent are grade 3 or higher, put 4 cards from the top of your deck into the put 4 cards from your drop zone into the deck, and then you can search for her mate and perform Legion. So her mate is Femme and perform Legion, and her second skill is an X skill. So yeah, you can do it more than once. So basically, so if she is in Legion, counterblast 2, okay, then choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards. Okay, choose 2 of your opponent's occupied rear guard circle. Then your opponent reveals the top 10 cards from the deck, and you choose, I think. Oh no, he chooses. Yeah, your opponent reveals top 10 cards from the deck, and then choose 2 grade 0s, and then replaces those 2 chosen rear guards with those 2 grade 0s, and then put the rest in the deck and shuffle the deck. So her skill, counterblast 2, essentially allows you to curse 2 rear guards and swap them into grade 0s from your deck. So her skill has 2 purposes. Number 1, you screw up your opponent's field. So when your opponent's field is most likely to be set up nicely to make columns, magic numbers. So your opponent probably set up like 16k columns or 21k columns. But if you use a skill, you can totally screw that up, and you can potentially call 4k or 5k grade 0s, which will greatly diminish the columns. So number 1, the columns are screwed up. Number 2, you save a guarding power, because once your opponent's column is screwed up, their power is weak. So most likely, whenever they attack you, you probably just need 5k guard for each attack, which is extremely cheap. So that's number 2, you save guarding power. Number 3, her skill forces you to put grade 0s from the deck onto the rear guard circle. So you essentially remove triggers from the deck. So you reduce the number of triggers in the deck that they can, check. So that's the third thing it does. So therefore, this skill is very good. So the third skill is, okay, if the number of grade 0 rear guards your opponent has is 2 or more, you can retire a unit with the same name. Okay, retire a rear guard with the same card name as the unit on the Vanguard circle, and then draw 2 cards once a turn. You can use the skill once a turn. So the last skill doesn't need you to be in Legion, but since the way it's worded, it says retire a rearguard with the same name as the unit on a Vanguard circle. You want it being in Legion is more advantageous because that way you have 2 cards you can use to retire. So her skill, you can retire copies of her and draw 2 cards. And if you're in Legion, you can also retire her to draw 2 cards. So early game, write her, curse your opponent, and ideally you want to have more copies of her in your hand, so you can call her out, retire, and draw 2 cards. So essentially what her second skill is, her last skill is really good because you're converting grade 3s that clog your hand into more cards. So grade 3s has no shield, if you guys notice. So killing them and drawing 2 cards is a good thing. So yeah, early game use her to curse your opponent and to generate advantage. So if you are in Legion, retire her or retire grade 3. I will not recommend retiring copies of her because she's a 12k attacker and you actually want 12k attackers, which is good to hit numbers. But I recommend retiring copies of any of her. I recommend retiring her if you have copies of her in your hand to easily draw 2 cards. So yeah, advantage engine, good. Next is Rias. So her first skill is Legion, so performing Legion. Her second skill is when you Legion, okay, retire one of your Witch rearguards and your opponent's Vanguard minus 5k for each grade 0 rearguard your opponent has. So her skill is only a one-off thing. So when you Legion, retire a Witch, your opponent minus 5k for every grade 0 on her field, or his field, yeah. So on average, so far when I played with her, on average I managed to make my opponent out. Your opponent have 3 grade 0s. So on average, your opponent will actually minus 15k. So your opponent's Vanguard is actually power is negative 4k. Isn't that funny? You know, all your rearguards will attack your opponent who is at negative 4 power, which is funny. But her skill is quite powerful because if you put it off, essentially you are giving power to every column. Yeah. So ideally, you want to have your opponent have 5 grade 0s. Therefore, your opponent will minus 20k. And since your opponent's Vanguard is probably 11k, your opponent's Vanguard's power is negative 9k, which is so good. Your opponent will not be able to guard all your attacks. So essentially, your opponent just dies. Her next skill is Act, main phase skill. Okay, counterblast 2. Okay, choose 1 rearguard circle. Your opponent looks at top 5 cards. Okay, your opponent reveals top 5 cards of his deck. Choose 1 grade 0 and replaces it. So these two have differences. Her skill requires you to be in Legion. Counterblast 2, you replace 2. Her skill doesn't require you to be in Legion, but it's quite hefty because Counterblast 2 to only swap 1, so it's quite costly. Counterblast 2 to retire to swap 1. Hers Counterblast 2 to swap 2. But ideally, you want to use to write her. So for her, ideally what you want to do is when write her, use her second skill before you Legion, so that you have more grade 0s on your opponent's field. Then Legion, then minus your opponent's Vanguard minus an additional 5k. So yeah, so she's your finisher. And ideally, if you can't kill your opponent, keep riding her and keep pushing your opponent, and your opponent probably just die. Next is her 12k attacker, quite self-explanatory. If 12k attacker for witches. So if your Vanguard is a witch, she is 12k attacker. Next is Deirdre. So when you call her, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's occupied rearguard circle, and your opponent chooses a grade 0 from his or her drop zone, and then replaces that rearguard with that grade 0. So as I mentioned earlier, you want to attack your opponent early game to rush them, so that they are forced to discard grade 0s to guard. So therefore, you want your opponent to have grade 0s in their drop zone to use her skill to replace. So yeah. So cursing, really good. Next is her skill. So when you call her, counterblast 1, discard a Shadow Paladin from your hand, and then draw 2 cards. Good for early game draws as well as setting up your drop zone. Vanilla, no skill. Witch of Stone, her skill is exactly the same as Deirdre. On call, Soul Blast 1, choose your opponent's rearguard, and your opponent chooses a grade 0 from drop zone and replaces that rearguard with that grade 0. Next is 10k attacker for witches. And then you have Securna. So her skill is, when this unit is called to a rearguard, you must choose another witch and retire it. Okay, if your opponent, if your Vanguard has witch, and it is in Legion, when you call her, retire a Witch Rearguard, and then your opponent minus 5k if your opponent has 2 Great Zeros. Okay, so her skill has 3 conditions. Number 1, you must have Witch Vanguard. Number 2, your Vanguard must be in Legion. Number 3, your opponent must have 2 Great Zeros on the field. Then call her, retire a Witch, and then your opponent minus 5k. So she is very good because you can stack her non-stop. So on the turn you write her and Legion her, your opponent already minus 5k per Great Zero. Then if you call her out, your opponent minus another 5k. And if you call another out, your opponent minus another 5k. So in that turn alone, you can potentially minus your opponent by 35k, which is insane. Your opponent will just die. But I wouldn't suggest just wasting it all in one turn because your opponent may survive. So I ideally just use a skill. Then if you can't write her again, use her skill next few turns to kill your opponent. Next is a stand trigger for the witches of Shadow Paladin. So when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, okay, Soul Blast 1, inflict 1 damage. So I used her to combo with her. So basically, on turn 3, or on the turn you Legion Fianna, use her skill, Blast 2, replace 2 Rearguards, and then attack. Chances are it will hit your Vanguard. Use her skill, put in the soul, call 2 of her out, Soul Blast 2, and inflict 2. So essentially for that turn, you use her skill for free. So that's the whole reason for that. Also, calling 2 witches is good because calling 2 of these Rearguards is good because they're both witches, and you can use them for her skill or her skill as retiring cost because both of them require you to retire a witch. So yeah. So ideally, when you write her, perform Legion, use her skill, Blast 2, Blast 2, curse your opponent, and then retire copy of herself to draw 2 cards, and then attack, hit, put in the soul, call 2 of these out as rest, Soul Blast 2, inflict 2. So in that turn, you've cursed 2. In that turn alone, you got a free unit, 1 extra free unit, and you get to draw an extra 1 card after discarding this, and then you get to curse your opponent's 2 Rearguards for free. So that's one combo you can do, which is really, really good. So yeah, so Witches of Shadow Paladin is a very interesting playstyle. I would say that it is one of those decks that require, if it is played by someone with skill, it is a very, very good card. But if you don't really know what to do with this deck, things can go really wrong because number 1, you need to know which Rearguard to curse and which Rearguard not to curse, and also you must time yourself such that you curse at the right time so that you can make use of cards that take advantage of having more Great Zeros, because a lot of these cards require you to have 2 Great Zero. It requires your opponent to have 2 Great Zeros on their Rearguard Circle, so you need to try to maintain 2 Great Zeros on your field. Yeah, and also do take note of your opponent's drop zone, because make sure your opponent has Great Zeros in your drop zone, so that because these 2 skills require your opponent to have Great Zeros in your opponent's drop zone. So yeah, Witch deck, very fun to screw your opponent with, and also very fun to kill your opponent with Rias and with minus 4k. It's so fun. So yeah, this has been my deck profile of the Shadow Paladin Witches. Hope you like it. If you have any comments or questions, do let me know down below. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you like my content, do subscribe, and thanks for watching. This has been LJS, and I'll see you guys next time.